All right, we're trying something a little bit different. Usually I do this in a coffee shop or a bar or something, coming up on a deadline. So I think I need to take advantage of the peace of this moment as well. So this is part four, chapter five. Again, this conversation isn't really for public consumption. I use this platform because it's the easiest way for me to document my own process. Book two should be completed by the end of the year, published by the beginning of next year. And so here are notes that I have for chapter five. Question: in George Lucas's Star Wars, Han Solo begins as a mercenary and ends up a hero, coming in at last to save Luke Skywalker. Answer: yes. Solo has done the hero act of sacrificing himself for another. Question: do you think that a hero is created out of guilt? Was Han Solo guilty because he had previously abandoned Skywalker? Answer: it depends on what system of ideas you want to apply. Solo wasn't a very practical guy, at least as he thought of himself as a materialist. But he was a compassionate human being at the same time and didn't know it. The adventure evoked a quality of his character that he hadn't known he possessed. And clearly, I made that note in bold. He thinks he's an egoist, but he really isn't. That's a very lovable kind of human being. And there are a lot of them functioning beautifully in the world. They think they're working for themselves. They're very practical and all, but there's something else pushing them. Question: what did you think of the bar scene? Of course, we're talking about Star Wars. Answer: it's one of my favorites. Why? Answer: where you are in the bar scene is on the edge. You're about to embark into the outlying spaces, a real adventure. This is the jumping off place. And there's where you meet people who've been out there and they've run the machines that go out there, and you haven't been there. Just like in Robert Louis Stevenson's Treasure Island, the atmosphere before you start the adventure. You're in the seaport, and there are all these old sorts, seamen who've been on the sea. That's their world, and likewise, these are the space people. Question: my favorite scene was when they were in the garbage compactor and the walls were closing in, and I thought, that's like the belly of the whale that swallowed Jonah. Answer: that's where they were, down in the belly of the whale. Question: what's the mythological significance of the belly? Answer: it's the descent into the dark. The belly is the dark place where digestion takes place and new energy is created. The story of Jonah in the whale is an example of a mythic theme that is practically universal, of the hero going into a fish's belly and ultimately coming out again, transformed. Question: why must the hero do that? Answer: it's a descent into the dark. The whale represents the personification of all that is in the unconscious. Psychologically, the whale represents the power of life locked in the unconscious. Metaphorically, water is the unconscious, and the creature in the water is the dynamism, the life or energy of the unconscious, which is dangerous and powerful and has to be controlled by consciousness. This energy of the unconscious has overwhelmed the conscious personality and must be disempowered, overcome, and controlled. In this first stage of this kind of adventure, the hero leaves the realm of light, the realm of the familiar, over which he has some measure of control, and moves toward the threshold. It is at the threshold, let's say the edge of a lake or sea, where a monster of the abyss comes to meet him. There are then two possible outcomes. One, the hero is cut to pieces and descends into the abyss in fragments, later to be resurrected. Footnote. In a story of the Jonah type, the hero is swallowed whole and taken into the abyss to be later resurrected. This is a variant of the death and resurrection theme. The conscious personality has come in touch with a charge of unconscious energy which it is unable to handle and must now suffer all of the trials and revelations of a terrifying night, a sea journey, while learning how to come to terms with this power of the dark and emerge at last to a new way of life. End of footnote. Or he may kill the dragon power as Siegfried does when he kills the dragon, but he takes the dragon blood. And I interrupt myself. The other possibility is that the hero, on encountering the power of the dark, may overcome it and kill it, as did Siegfried and St. George when they killed the dragon. But as Siegfried learned, he must then taste the dragon blood in order to take to himself something of that dragon power. Now, this is hinting into book 3, so we're not going to emphasize this particular battle, but in order to assimilate that power, he must taste the dragon blood in order to assimilate that power. When Siegfried has killed the dragon and tasted the blood, he hears the song of nature. He has transcended his humanity and reassociated himself with the powers of nature, which are the powers of a life, and from which our minds remove us. I really love this idea of transcending and then reassociating. It's really deep. I think I can use that. You see this thing up here? This consciousness thinks it's running the shop, but it's a secondary organ of a total human being. This actually flips to chapter 1, what I plan to be discussing in chapter 1. But it's a secondary organ of a total human being, and it must not put itself in control. It, the consciousness, must submit and serve the humanity of the body. When it does put itself in control, you get a man like Darth Vader in Star Wars, the man who consciously goes over to the intellectual side, otherwise known as the dark side. And I'm making a note to myself here. I say, remember to check out Confrontation, the presentation. Also consider that much of this is book 3, the actual battle book. I just said that. Darth Vader isn't living in terms of humanity. He's living in terms of a system. And this is the threat to our lives. We all face it. We all operate in a society in relation. We all operate in our society in relation to a system. Now, is the system going to eat you up and relieve you of your humanity? Or are you going to be able to use the system for human purposes? Now, of course, this reminds me of the panel we had on Wednesday. I'm making a note to myself on imagination. Question. So, the one great story in our search to find our place in the drama. So, the one great story is our search to find our place in the drama. Answer. To be in accord with the grand symphony that this world is, to put the harmony of our own body in accord with the harmony of the world. Question. When I read these stories, no matter the culture or origin, I feel a sense of wonder at the spectacle of human imagination groping to try to understand this existence, to invest in their small journey these transcendent possibilities. It's a perfect statement of what should be happening in this book. Has that ever happened to you? Answer. I think of mythology as a homeland of the muses, the inspirers of art, the inspirers of poetry. To see life as a poem and yourself participating in a poem is what the myth does for you. Question: a poem? Answer: I mean a vocabulary in the form not of words, but of acts and adventures, which connotes something transcendent of the action here, so that you always feel in accord with the universal being. I love this so much and I understand it so clearly. So I'm going to take a time and try to break this down. When he says that the point of the myth is to see life as a poem and to see yourself participating in a poem, that's what the myth does for you. And the question is asking for clarification. What do you mean when you say that? I mean, when I say poem, I mean a vocabulary, a glossary, a list in the form not of words, but of acts and adventures, right? The myth gives us the glossary or the vocabulary of actions and adventures. And in embracing the myth as life, we can find something transcendent of the action. So even though there are events and circumstances in life, right? That's the actual words of the poem. But anyone who knows anything about poetry knows poetry isn't about the words. Poetry is about the transcendent meaning of the words, right? And so that's what the myth does for our life. What poems do to words is what myths do to life actions or events. Question: when I read these myths, I am simply in awe of the mystery of it all. We can presume, but we cannot penetrate. Answer: that is the point. The person who thinks he has found the ultimate truth is wrong. There is an often quoted verse in Sanskrit which appears in the Chinese Tao Te Ching as well. And this is what it says: he who thinks he knows doesn't know. He who knows that he doesn't know knows. For in this context, to know is not to know, and not to know is to know. I love that so much. And again, I'm thinking about my experience on this panel on Wednesday. Question: far from undermining my faith, your work in mythology has liberated my faith from the cultural prisons to which it had been sentenced. I love this statement so much because that's the effect that I want to have for people in my books. On dreams. Answer: ever since Freud's interpretation of dreams was published, there has been a recognition of the importance of dreams. But even before that, there were dream interpretations. People had superstitious notions about dreams, for example. Something is going to happen because I dreamed it is going to happen. Question: why is a myth different from a dream? Answer: oh, because a dream is a personal experience of that deep, dark ground that is the support of our conscious lives. And a myth is society's dream. The myth is the public dream, and the dream is the private myth. Ooh, mercy God. If your private myth, your dream, happens to coincide with that of the society, you are in good accord with your group. If it isn't, you've got an adventure in the dark forest ahead of you. Oh my God. So if my private dreams, this is the clarifying question, if my private dreams are in accord with the public mythology, I'm more likely to live healthily in that society. But if my private dreams are out of step with the public, answer, you'll be in trouble. If you're forced to live in that system, you'll be a neurotic. Question. But aren't there visionaries and even leaders and heroes close to the edge of neuroticism? Answer. Yes, they are. Question. How do you explain that? Answer. They've moved out of the society that would have protected them and into the dark forest, into the world of fire, of original experience. Original experience has not been interpreted for you. And so you've got to work out your life for yourself. Either you can take it or you can't. You don't have to go far off the interpreted path to find yourself in very difficult situations. The courage to face the trials and bring a whole new body of possibilities into the field of interpreted experience for other people to experience, that is the hero deed. Oh my God. I think I have to stop right there. I have to stop right there. Oh man.